What does die to love mean?
I thought I'd start today's session about what do I mean by die to love, by actually reading a little bit from my book, Die to Love. Ask yourself if you're willing to die to know the truth. Nothing less will do. To know the love that you are, you as you know yourself, your ego, will need to die. This is not the death of the body. This is a jump into the unknown. It is the last thing that you do before you are no more. No more just testing the waters out of curiosity. No more playing with words and concepts. True love demands nothing less than full immersion. To die to love is a complete surrender. It is truly realizing that no experience, no concept, no meaning, no state, no condition, no person can provide the peace that you long for. This is the end of all that. So over the years, since I wrote that book, and also since I've had Die to Love as the name of my website, people have asked me, what do you mean by Die to Love? Because it doesn't seem to fit. How can you put die and love in the same sentence? They seem to be almost contradictory. And that's because usually we think of love as being a sweet experience, or about loving someone or something, having a certain high experience, or expansive experience. But the love that I'm pointing to is actually what I was pointing to in the guided meditation, is who you are, right? So it is essentially what I'm saying is it's an invitation to die to who you really are. In other words, the one that you have believed yourself to be, the story of me, the person that you have believed yourself to be in your life, the history, the qualities, the ups and the downs, the traumas, the achievements, everything that you have believed yourself to be, including the body and all its pain and pleasure and everything, that the belief that that is who you are, it needs to be seen to actually not be the truth of who you are. So that's the death. Sorry, I have this fly that keeps flying on my nose. That's the death that I'm talking about, the death of who you think you are. And it's a dying into or to love. So it's like a drowning, in a sense, a disappearing, an absolute surrender of who you think you are to who you really are. So it's a losing yourself, a free fall in not defining, not knowing, not grasping, not owning or having any ground that you call yourself, in any identity, any location, any fixed reference point. It's a total free fall in love, in that not knowing, in that awareness that you are, that is simply aware, but it has no boundaries. It has no location. It has no particular flavor or experience. So what I'm talking about is not a particular experience. You may have an experience when you first recognize it. Many people have a sense of expansion when they first recognize who they really are. But that experience will no doubt pass eventually. So we have to see that actually the true recognition or the true knowing of who you are has got nothing to do with any kind of expansive experience. It is what you recognize in the midst of any kind of beautiful, expansive experience. And that is the love that you are. It's not a feeling of love. It's not a high experience. I use the word love because I'm still speaking about the awareness that you are, but I use the word love in this case now just to point to let's say, a different aspect of that awareness. It's the same thing, really, but just different way of speaking about it. That this awareness is aware no matter what. It doesn't care whether you are feeling good or you're not feeling good. It doesn't care whether you are a murderer or a saint. It doesn't care whether you are super spiritual or you get drunk every day. It doesn't care. It is aware. That's all it does. That's all it is. It's unconditionally accepting of whatever is here. That's why we call it like the background, because it's unconditional. It just is aware. So it doesn't give you, points for being more spiritual or meditating longer or sitting in the lotus position. It's just simply aware, And this is beautiful also because it is unconditionally loving, by being simply aware. So even if you are, in a mess in your human experience, this that you are loves it all, no matter what. So this is the freedom of this unconditional love, that it is so boundless that it's beyond imagination. It's beyond the mind. The mind can't grasp how unconditional it really is. And that's your true nature. You are this wide, wide, wide openness. You are not limited. Although in the human experience, of course, there are many limits. There are the limits of this body, right? We can't walk through walls, or, we're always going to have certain issues with this human body, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. This human's a bit messy, But if we see the nature of these limitations, the nature of this human, nature of the thinking, that it's a beautiful tool, but it can never know the truth of who we are. It is always going to be limited. When we see the nature of it, there is such an unconditional love because we identify with that awareness of this human. We see it. Doesn't mean that we don't feel it. We experience it fully. And yet simultaneously there is this seeing, this knowing of it. And this is where there is a dying to love, where the belief in a separate me, that somehow my thoughts, believing that my thoughts define who I am, or believing that my thoughts really mean something about who I am, that I am the story that I tell myself. And we see that actually all these stories, all these beliefs about me are not actually referring to anyone in here. We have to investigate that. We have to check for ourselves and check, is there someone in here? And when we truly recognize that there is no one, no separate entity, there is simply experience happening. This is the recognition that actually I am not. This is the death. And you see that actually there is simply life living, or love living. It's the same. We could call it many different things, you know. It's none of these words, but it's all of them. So it's life living itself. It's life living this human. It's not that I'm living my life. It's life is living me as this human. Yeah. And this is the death. And it can be different for every individual. Some people describe this death or this recognition or waking up to be a very big experience. Like they might have some expansive state experienced. It might really feel like a death. In other words, the body might actually go through a lot of physical or emotional experiences. It can come along with a sense of grief and loss. Losing who you thought you were can be quite devastating, but it can also be very freeing, can be very blissful and beautiful. But whatever the experience is, that's not the point. The experience will go on changing and changing. But who you are as love itself, life itself, you never change. You are simply aware, constant, timeless. Always here, always aware.